I need just a couple minutes here to get my CruiseControl on the virtual machine running up. You can actually feel free. I know you want to. So I'll tell you all the reasons the ESPS stops for you now. See as how John moves in the room. Session on CruiseControl and nAnt. Don Belcham, you've probably been to a session or two before with me, so we'll skip over this stuff. I'll give away a resharper and JetBrains license this afternoon, so or resharper and .trace license from JetBrains. So we'll figure out how we're going to do that at the end. Usually off the best question or something like our best questions. We'll do that. So I'm here out of Edmonton, Alberta. I'm an agile practitioner. For me, CruiseControl continuous integration specifically is a very, very important concept for working on software. CruiseControl composes of two things. The first thing is automating your builds. So the reason you want to automate a build or have a build script using something like nAnt, which we'll talk about today as well, is you want reproducibility. So you want reproducibility at the developer workstation, and you want reproducibility on the continuous integration server. The way that, and you want that same reproducibility between the two. So if you want the same between the two, you have to run the same script on each of those two locations then, right? Run the same script as a developer locally on your workstation. Run that same script on the CI server as well, and now you've got the same thing happening. This isn't the kind of reproducibility you want, right? You don't want to reproduce something by creating a fake of it. You want to reproduce it by doing the exact same thing. So if you want to have a reproduction of a Rolex, it better be exactly a Rolex. You want the same build reproducibility, you better have the exact same build. Continuous integration, which is running your build script, is all about fast feedback, increasing the feedback that you as a developer or your team of developers are getting from the code compilation, the test running, that type of thing. This is fast feedback, right? Get the old smack inside the head when you try and pick the girl up. Or maybe the other way around for the girls, I'm not sure. Never tried to pick a guy up, so I don't know if they slap back. It is all about fast feedback though. So you want to have that script running on your local machine. So if you run it, and it takes 30 seconds, 2 minutes to run, you know within 2 minutes then whether compilation is failing or whether the tests are failing. You know all of these things are happening really, really quickly. If you don't have that, you check code in, the next guy goes and gets the latest version on his machine. He hits F5, Control-Shift-Build, whatever in Visual Studio to build it, and it doesn't compile. So that maybe is an hour later, maybe it's 2 days later, depends on how often you're getting latest version of code. But you don't know, you don't have that feedback till then, it makes it a lot harder to figure out why that isn't happening. If I figure it out on my machine, or the CI service tells me it's within a couple minutes of it happening, it's fresh in my head. What did I just do? I added a whole new slice for editing customer. Well, it's not compiling, so maybe I've got an error in my code in the edit customer, maybe I didn't add all the files to source control, but I know it's for edit customer. A couple days later, I don't remember what classes were involved in edit customer, or I don't remember as easily. So now I have a lot more work to do to figure out what the problem is. So fast feedback, everything's about fast feedback. That feedback loop is for you as a developer, for your team, that's continuous integration, for your client or your testers, say you have a test department, for your testers, you want them telling you that bugs exist really quick so you can fix them and return it back to them really quick. You want that, the client wants the same thing. They want to know that they want to find problems, give it back to you and have you fix it within 3 weeks, not 3 years. Many people worked on a project where the client hasn't seen the code for 6 months, or hasn't seen the application for 6 months. It's fairly regular in big monolithic projects, waterfall projects. You do everything, client doesn't see it until it's ready for user acceptance testing. Then they say, hey, hang on, this idea of adding or editing a customer isn't right for us. That's slow feedback. Now you got to go back. Maybe that was the first feature you worked on the whole application. You got to go back and figure it all out and do it over again. If you were to give the customer that edit customer functionality 3 weeks in, it's a lot easier to go back and work on it probably than it is 6 months in. Oh. Okay, so let's talk about setting up CruiseControl. How many people are actually using CruiseControl here? How many people are using something like TeamCity or some other automated continuous integration server? So just CruiseControl, and there's only a smattering of you here. So CruiseControl is made by ThoughtWorks, or is managed by ThoughtWorks, really. It's an open source product. You can go download it off of, just search for CruiseControl.net. There's 2 versions, there's a Java version and a .NET version. CruiseControl.net is what we're using here. Search for it in Google or live search if you work for Microsoft. Then you can go ahead and grab the first link off there. It's the first one that comes back from Google. Download it, and it's an install on the server. It's XML configuration, so it kind of sucks from that standpoint. We're going to look at a tool today that puts a UI over the XML, makes it way easier to configure. So let's just jump over to my VM here. The tool I'm using is CruiseControl.net or CCNet config. It's available off of codeplex.com. Codeplex.com/CCNet config. Free open source tool. It's a great tool for putting a UI over the XML if it will run. There we go. So this is the interface. You open up your file, a CCNet config file. And here we go. We're in the IDE for it. Can you guys see that all right? Yeah? Okay. You just have to speak up for me. I like user interaction here, so feel free to shoot out a question or throw stuff at me or whatever. So if we're looking at this right now, we have 2 different projects up here that you guys might be able to see, might not. It's one's called Taking CI to the next level, the other's called Taking CI to the next level nightly. Each project represents a different build, a different compilation process. Each one of them is configured differently. In this case, they're both compiling and executing the exact same code. They're just doing it in different manners. So one's doing it on every check-in, the top one's doing it on every single check-in, the other one is doing it every night. It's scheduled to do it every night. Well, that's the intent of it. We're going to talk about why it's not doing that, but the intent is to do it every night. So I have them split because I want that first one on check-in to run only the really fast tests, my unit tests. I want the feedback to the developer to happen really, really quickly. Say, hey, continuous integration server broke. What's the problem? Fix it right now. So this whole culture around CI is that if the CI server goes red, you should stop what you're doing, the guy who did the last thing, and fix it before they continue on their work. CI servers should never sit red for very long. If it's a really bad problem, you gotta fix, maybe it sits there for a while, but it should be being attended to while it's sitting there red. I've got my current project, my guys didn't understand this very well on it, and they let the CI server sit red for 6 days before they tried to fix it. It gave them really, really fast feedback that there was a problem, but they didn't bother trying to solve the problem until 6 days later. It made it a lot harder to figure out exactly what the problem was and how to fix it. So, culture of CI, if it goes red, fix it now, and then carry on. The whole purpose of CI is to know that your code's in a really, really good state all the time. So what we're looking at over here on the right-hand side is all the different settings for the build. So you see the name of, this is the name that shows up inside of the web interface that there is for CruiseControl. We're telling it an artifacts directory, all of this stuff. If we go look at it inside of XML, So this is the XML that there is in there. It's a lot harder to manage and navigate through that XML than it is that UI, right? All the stuff that's in here is what's represented in the UI. It's a graphical way of looking at it. So we can see all the things that we need to set up in here. So if we want to change the name of this, okay, let's just look. The CCNet tray is another tool that you use that the developers will have running on their machine. When a build breaks, this little circle here will go red. When it's actually building, it'll be yellow. And then down in the system tray, which I don't know if you can see too well, it sits down here as well. And that represents the combination of all projects in there. So if one project is red, that down there is red. And you can immediately tell that there's something wrong in your code environment as a developer. So if we take a look at this, we've got our 2 projects set up in there. We'll go in here, we'll change this to have on check-in as part of its name. We'll save that up. Nice. Okay, it doesn't like me editing it for some reason. Saw that changed in there, but I wanted to look at this here. It's just not gonna show me the change. So if I in CC Tray, I can double click on it as well, and it'll bring me to the web version, the web dashboard for the project. So hopefully we'll see. Yeah, it didn't accept the change. We probably need to restart the service, or it's waiting to refresh. But that would be reflected, that change. Through an error, that's why. So you can go through and change all these things. This is where you set up stuff like your source control. So we can expand this out. See, right now I'm using a file system source control just because it works really well for demos. You know, usually you're not storing your source just in a file folder. Just here, if I save a file, it treats it like I check the file into something like Visual Source Save or TFS or Subversion. All of those are options if I want to set it up. So in production, I've got a Subversion repository at work right now. So I can go through and pick Subversion source control. Everything changes that's below it. So now I've got all these settings that Subversion will handle and will accept. If I go change this to TFS, or let's pick Visual Source Save. You see that things change again. We've got source safe directory now. That's not something Subversion needs to worry about. We've got, there should be one, here's the executable. Where's the source safe executable? ss.exe, so that it knows where to run it. So all this stuff is really easy to set up through here. You also set up things underneath it like triggers. So a trigger is when you want this build to kick off. In this case, we should have it being kicked off on an interval. Interval is on check-in. We have a task, so we're running a nAnt script. We have publishers. This is saying, XML log publisher is saying take the XML output from CruiseControl and put it in a format that the web UI can display. And then the file merge publisher is actually taking stuff out of the compile log from nAnt. So nAnt creates an XML file. We're taking that and we're putting it into a format that the web page can display as well. So if you have automated unit tests, you would have another one in here for the unit test, pull that stuff out and display, put it in a format for display. So all the configuration can be done through here, and you just save it up and onto the server. The server, you might have to restart the service, which I think I do right now for it to run, and then everything's good to go. What I find is that this works good when you're setting up the first project, but these 2 projects are really similar. The only things that are different is I'm building them to different final directories where I'm compiling to. I just have a different structure I'm working with. Still working with the same source code repository, same nAnt script, all that type of stuff. Rather than go through and put all those entries in again, I always just end up going back over here and taking this project. So this project here, this represents one of those entries in the thing, in the other tool. Grab that block of XML, copy it, paste it, alter the name, open it up with the other tool. I've got exactly the same thing there. All I do is go through change file paths, and if I'm doing something like this, it's much easier. So, any questions about this? Yeah.
This UI is can it be connected from remotely, like service in somewhere like nAntContrib?
Absolutely. I've got internet here. This is my build server. I have no idea where this server is located. This is a virtual private server that I ran. I have no idea where that build server is located in the world. The first time I've ever connected to it from any of those. So, but yeah, it's somewhere out there. I think it's in the US. I'm not sure. So it's just a website. So I can connect to it through this IDE or this web page. I also have, you can see down in my system tray here, I have CC tray running. CC tray is hooked up to that as well. Pointing at, these two are pointing at the exact same thing right now. My Igloo Coder Commons project. There's multiple ways to connect up to stuff. So if you have it behind a firewall, you can connect up using HTTP or remoting or any of these things. So you don't have to necessarily open up a new port for it or anything like that. So, but yeah, you can connect it from anywhere.
How about the IDE?
The IDE. Oh, that tool? That tool I use to configure, you need access directly to the CCNet config file. So what I find I do, so for my remote server one, this one here, I go to that server, FTP the file down to myself, do edits on my machine, and then copy it back up. Because you need to be able to access like C program files on the local machine where the service is running, right?
So the UI works like just create a config for CCNet.
Yeah, it's just great to configure all that stuff. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, long-running builds. They suck. Holy. There's a whole bunch of white going on right now. Long-running builds suck. You want fast feedback. The whole purpose of continuous integration and build scripts is fast feedback, right? So if you're not getting fast feedback, you're not getting anything useful. So you have two types of tests, unit tests and integration tests. You guys understand the difference between unit and integration tests? Anyone not? Okay, so unit tests are really fast, integration tests are really slow, because there's just more going on, right? You have intrinsic latency with across network connections, database calls, all that kind of stuff. You want to split those out, right? I don't want my developer running unit tests if they're running integration tests locally if it's going to take 30 minutes to run. So I've had tests in the past that have taken an hour to run the whole test suite. You don't want that. You don't want a developer stopping and waiting for that kind of feedback for an hour before they can progress again. You know, the same thing, if you've got the checking culture and the CI culture of wait for it to go green, so it's building, it's yellow, wait for it to go green before you carry on working, you don't want them to have to wait for an hour for that as well. So they should run the build locally, wait for an hour, check their code in, wait for an hour until it goes green on the CI server. That's 2 hours lost every check-in. You don't want that. You want to have them running as fast as possible. You still need slow running tests, but you don't want them to slow the developers down. So there's a couple ways you can handle that. What we saw in that window that I was showing you in my VM, I had two tests. I had a nightly build, and I had the check-in build. Check-in build was only running fast tests, get that fast feedback. The nightly build was running the slow test. So it runs once a night, 5 a.m., 1 a.m., something like that. Whatever is a good time based on network stuff. It takes 4 hours. Microsoft's integration tests for some of their products take days to run. So if it's going to run slow, do it at night. If it's going to take 2 hours, make sure it's early enough in the morning or late enough at night. When the development team gets back in the next morning, it's showing green or red. First thing, they check. If it's red, all hands on deck. We're fixing this problem. No one starts working on their other stuff until we've got it fixed. So, slow builds. One of the really good ways to deal with this is CCNet queuing. So I've got those two builds in CruiseControl right now, two projects, one for nightly, one for check-in. It's not really nightly, that's what I'm kind of faking that out. But that's a normal way of doing it. CCNet queuing allows you to do the same type of thing, have fast feedback, without altering, or without having to run it once a night. So if it's only running once in the night, that's still slow feedback, right? You're not getting the feedback till the next day. But I don't want to stop people, so I still have to split builds. When that first one goes green, I want the second one to kick off. And then I want that second one to also start doing its thing, and it runs for however long. Someone else can start doing check-in, start that other fast build again. When it's done, it'll kick off the slow build again when it's done. Somebody checks in the fast build, and then checks in another fast build right after while it's still compiling. Maybe it takes 3 minutes. You get multiple of those fast builds checked in. You want those to happen before the slow build happens. So you can say, fast build, you get your feedback. All these guys get their feedback really fast. When the slow build starts, they can then, everybody's fast build check-ins are compiled into one, and you get that feedback a little bit later. But it doesn't slow down the guys on the fast build. So the way you set this up is really, really simple. It's amazingly simple, actually. So you have this queue property here. So we've got queue and queue priority. This is right on the project level. I'm calling this queue check-in. I'm giving it a priority of 1. It's the highest priority you can give. Smaller numbers are higher in this case. If I look at the nightly one, I've got it in the same queue. Check-in and a queue priority of 5. So it's a lower priority. I don't know why they pick to have lower be higher and higher be lower, but that's what it is. You can also see it inside of here. You have this show queues button. You see we have a check-in queue. If we don't have these set up to be in queues, the way it treats it is that each project is its own queue. So they don't interact together. So you would see over here, you would see taking CI to the next level would be one queue, taking CI to the next level 90 would be the other queue. So they're treated separately if you don't define it. What we can do here though, is we can fire up Visual Studio. Sorry I didn't have this set up, but I had to kind of rush over here from the other presentation. So we'll fire up Visual Studio, we'll just modify the code a little bit, we'll do a bunch of saves, and we'll see how the queues react to it. It doesn't refresh, unfortunately, all that well. So this piece over here, we'll start seeing the builds trickle in under it. It doesn't refresh very fast, so we might or might not see it. Oh, hey, look, we got a queue there, something in the queue. That's just its checking. See how it's not refreshed? This stuff over here is all sleeping, but it picked it up and said, oh, hey, it's in the process of checking for modifications, and now it just sits there. So there's something bulky going on there. It's open source. If you want to fix it, you can. So we'll just get in here, and I've just got, this is just a dummy project. It's zero business use whatsoever. The tests are awful. I'm putting thread.sleep in the tests so that we can slow it down to hopefully see this stuff happening. And, whoa, oh, something saved. You see that? It kicked off a build, something saved. When I opened Visual Studio, it saved the files for some reason, even though I didn't ask it to. Probably, it modified the resharper files, I think is what happened. So it's building. This is what happens when it's building. It's taking its time, it's doing its thing. I've got this, probably this thread.sleep 8000 is being run. So it'll do its thing. As soon as that stops, you'll see this one here kick off. Well, hopefully that one goes green. If it doesn't go green, this is a configuration thing. You say only kick off the next one in the queue if the one prior to it succeeded. So there we go, white green, we got the next one going on there. So if I go in here and modify this now, and just put a couple more comments in here, save it, we should see this update where this one here will start up again now. So it's gone green. I'm Joe developer. I said, oh hey, you know, Mary over there, she just finished her thing, checked it in. I can go do mine now. Did I save it? There we go. Nope. Oh, there we go, it starts. So, that's weird that it started after. It shouldn't have waited until after. There must have been something, build was still running, but it didn't slow me or down or stop me from continuing my work process, right? So it's not going to show us very well today. What we should see is this one should finish off, and then this one should kick off, and we should get some more stuff happening in there. Let's actually take this. Take the slowdown test and comment it out. There we go. So we got some pending builds waiting here. They should show up and start building and start showing up over here, I would think. If it doesn't work here, we're going to move on, but trust me, it queues up on this. Okay, there we go. We just barely caught a glimpse of it there. It put this one in, and then it jumped another one up into there as well. See if we can get that again. There we go. You see an added one. It's putting it in because of the higher or lower priority for this one here. It's keeping it at the bottom and just keeps adding it in. So that's what you can do with build queuing. Let's jump back to the slideshow here. Okay, labeling and versioning. You guys get Sesame Street over here? Know the count? No? Okay. Doesn't work. It works great in North America, so sorry. When you're building your applications, you've got your nAnt script. It's doing an automatic compile of your projects into the assemblies you need. Why not have it version your assemblies as well? When we go to deploy our projects out to production, or even to a test environment, you want to have a version number on there for reference, right? Give it to your testers, and they say, hey, we've got a defect. You want to say what or when was that defect occurring? What version was it occurring in? Or in production, same thing. We've got a problem, or we've got a question, what version is it running in? So there's lots of ways using cruise-control and nAnt to do versioning, to get version numbers, sorry. You can use iteration, date, rolling count, that's the default. So when you first set up cruise-control, it's just going to count up from 0. First version will be 1. Second time it builds, it'll be 2. Third time it'll be 3. Just keeps on counting. Iteration is for more of an agile, iterative process. How many of you guys are doing iterations at work, where you develop for a couple weeks and then release? So a few. So this would be something you could set up and say, starting on June 1st, that's our first iteration. It's 2 weeks long. Every iteration is 2 weeks long. So you put that value in. So when it changes over to June 14th, it'll change the iteration 2. And then within each iteration, it'll do this count, this rolling count thing, where the first built-in iteration will be 1, second will be 2, 3, 4, just keep counting up. When it rolls over to iteration 2, it drops back down to 0 again. So you're going to end up going 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, 2.0, 2.1, 2.2. So you can always tell when in an iteration it was created, plus what iteration it was. That'll also tell you when during the calendar year it was created as well. So use that. That's cruise control functionality. So that happens inside cruise control. You set cruise control up to create those values for you. You then pass it off to nAnt, or automatically it gets passed off. It's actually called a labeling cruise control. So it's automatically passed off to nAnt. This microphone's just funky. So it automatically gets passed off to nAnt. There's about 8, 10 different things that cruise control passes to nAnt. There's working directory, artifact directory, and CCNet label. That's the value that you'll get out of here. That will then be taken by nAnt. You'll have to build your script so that you know what you want to do with it. What do I want to apply it to my assemblies? Maybe I want to modify it. Maybe I want it to have a slightly different format than cruise control has it. So we'll take a look at how you do that now. So inside cruise control, we set up at the project level, we have this labeler. I've got this one set up to be an iteration labeler. It started on November 18, 2007. It was, I got it set to a 7-week iteration. I thought it was 7 days, but it's actually weeks that you put in there. Increment on failure. So do I want the number to get bigger if the build goes red? Most of the time you don't want that. Sometimes you make them. They have a prefix. So an iteration labeler only does 2 values. It'll do iteration and build number. So I can say iteration.build number, that's what separator's for. Iteration.build number And then prefix, it'll be, in this case, 1.0.iteration.build number. So anytime I build my assembly, it'll be 1.0.2.73. 73rd build of the second iteration, version 1. So that's all the stuff that you're setting up here. That's the number that you get that gets created in CruiseControl and gets passed off to your nAnt script. So if we look at the nAnt script now, this is a good thing about ReSharper. ReSharper supports editing and refactoring of your nAnt scripts. So if we go up and look here, we have this version. Oh, that's a little low. We have version equals 0000, 4 zeros. I pre-fill my version in my nAnt scripts so that I can tell if it's not coming from CruiseControl or not. So if it's always zeros, that file was built on a local developer's machine. Because CruiseControl is using this script, and so am I locally. If I run it locally, I get zeros. If I go to a test server or a production server, right-click and look at the version number on a file, if I see zeros, I know that something's happened that I don't want to happen. Somebody's built it on their machine and done a deployment from their local machine. You never want to do that, right? You want to build from your build server and deploy from your build server, not build from your local machine. So I pre-fill it, I set my property. This is like setting a variable value in that, so I set it. And then just below that, we've got this if statement. So if a property exists called CCNet label, so did CruiseControl pass me the value, CCNet label, what it constructed 1.0.0.1 or something like that, then go ahead and override the zeros with the version number that CruiseControl created for me. So now I've done my check and created and set that variable named version to have the value that indicates the environment it was built in, as well as the version number for the build. So the next step that you need to do to version is, so if you're in Visual Studio and you look inside of a new project, there's always an assemblyinfo.cs file. That's the file that you put your versioning in, you put your company name, your product name, your copyright notice, all that kind of stuff goes in there. You can automatically create that file with nAnt. So that's what we're doing here. We've got this target edit assembly, ASM info. That's the element, that's the nAnt element built right into nAnt to go ahead and auto-create that file. We tell it what file, or what we want to name it. We also say that it's in C#. Then we do some imports. This just adds usings at the top of the class file. And then we set up attributes. That's all that's in those files are attributes. So if we go look at this, I'll just show the one that this creates here. So this is what it's creating coming out of that, right? So it's doing, you can't really see because it's so low, sorry, but that's what all those attribute things are creating. So we're saying it's not COM visible. Here's the version number. Obviously it's from CCNet label value. I've got a title attribute, a description attribute, a copyright attribute, and a GUID one. I'll talk about the GUID one in a second. That's really, it's just a demo thing. So if we go back and look here, I've got my COM visible, version, title, description, copyright, and then that GUID. That file is generated automatically from here. All that's doing though is that's just generating that one file in the directory. That's creating this file right here. When we compile the code, we need to say compile that in as part of our final assembly. So if we go back over here and do a look for for compile. So this is a ReSharper feature as well. We'll look at compile. I'm doing my compilation using CFC, which is the command line C# compiling tool. Now, if you're running Visual Studio, you hit F5, Control-Shift build. It's all just shelling out the CFC. I could also use a project build, which would just take in and say, what's your solution file, or what's your project file, and build it based on the structure of that. I like doing this though, because I believe Visual Studio is simply for organizing my files in a meaningful way for me to work with. It's not how I architect my final assemblies for deployment though. This is how I architect. This is where I do my architecting of my final assemblies for deployment. So if I have one project inside of my solution with all my different stuff in there, I may need 3 assemblies to go out to the servers. I would do that 3 assemblies in here. So that's why I'm using CSC. So I got all my CSC stuff set up. You see I'm doing an include of all my application code, **/**CS, all the CS files inside of that folder that this property has in it. Then I'm saying include that output file, that assembly info, common assembly info.cs that we saw over here. So include that file that's highlighted, and exclude any ** in any subfolders, exclude assembly info.cs. That's the auto-generated file that Visual Studio creates. I don't want that one in there. I want to use mine. So I exclude the auto-generated one, include mine. When it compiles the code up, we'll now have the version number in it. Well, we saw what was in there, but let's just take a look at an actual version. So if we look at this DLL here, and look at the version on it, there we go. We see the last build is 1.0.3.84. If we look at that there, and scroll over, that's this project up here, 1.0.3.84. So we're passing through our versioning automatically to that. You guys got any questions about that? It's really, really powerful tool to save you a lot of work about versioning assemblies.
Is there any way you can sync the person number accounts out of the
There are ways, there's no automatic way though, but what it's doing in the background is it's actually putting them into a file and just storing what the last one was in a file. You could write your own little piece of nAnt code to do that. Say, go out and look at this one common file. All projects will go out and look at that one common file. You have to explicitly write some build script code to do that. This here, you can't get this automatically synced up, as far as I know. So it would be a nice feature though.
Can build scripts be done for, like, if I am a developer,
Yep.
I'm just developing the part. I want to just, the code which I have written, I want to try and run it on the user test.
Yep.
I'm not sure whether it's a code for checking or not.
Yeah. Well, so if you're running this locally, you're running the same build script locally, right?
Yeah.
So just run it in the command line. That's all you do. Just run it in the command line on your local machine. It'll only test the code that you have. So nothing in the build script goes out to the source code repository and gets code down. You don't want to do that. You want to run it against the code that you have on your machine. So that would be your edited code prior to checking. Verify it.
Use the same script first.
How do you want to use the same script? Because if you run it locally on your machine with one script and it goes green, but it's using a different script on the build server, it might go red. You don't know. You want to use the exact same script on both locations all the time. Just for consistency and to make sure that it's frustrating. I've had guys running 2 different scripts. It's frustrating as all heck. When one goes green, one goes red. Any other questions about versioning? Okay, we'll carry on to the next stuff then. We talked a bit about just building the application. So let's talk about why I'm using CSC. I think the IDE is a place to organize my code, not a place to organize my architecture. So treat the IDE as a code editing framework. I don't even use it for organizing anything. Even plugin model, I've done plugin architectures. I still organize it the way I want to look at working the code. I do my plugin architecture stuff, compile my plugins separately inside my build scripts. The risk that you run with it is that it's really easy to cross-pollinate code that shouldn't be cross-pollinated, right? Have something that's going to be assembled into, or compiled into one assembly being referenced by another piece of code that's going to be compiled into a separate assembly, and those two might not actually have references into that compile time. So you really have to watch that. the more mature your team is, the less likely you're going to find that to be a problem. There still are a few tools out there that you can use to protect yourself. A tool like nAntContrib will allow you to set up warnings, run nAntContrib. It'll give you a warning saying, hey, you got references that you shouldn't have in your code right now. So you can do that. Yeah?
What's the benefit you're getting here?
Out of doing this, the benefit I get is, so Visual Studio, the more projects you have in a solution in Visual Studio, the slower it loads, the slower it builds, like the slower everything happens in Visual Studio, right? Additional projects add additional overhead to the IDE. So this is a performance thing. It's also it's a personal preference in some ways, right? Very few people do this type of thing, but it's a personal preference, one that I really am attached to, and one I'm starting to see gather some momentum. So, but yeah, it's primarily the performance is what I'm using, and it's navigation of code to a certain extent as well.
If it's performance, then you can disable some of the projects from compiling.
It's not compiling where I see the performance, because I don't compile inside the IDE. I just load up Visual Studio with 60 projects in it. Tell me how fast that is. It's not very fast, right? If you're loading up Visual Studio with 5 projects, it's way faster. Even if it's the same amount of classes and code in it, it's way faster. That's the big one for me, is that performance. I don't build inside Visual Studio. It's a tough one to sell. I know I'm not going to convince everyone in here to change over to this. It's a tough one to sell. It's right on the edge of what people consider best practice. Actually, it's over the edge of what people consider best practice. But it's one I see a lot of benefit from myself. The other reason is that it forces me to do my architecting down inside my build script. And I personally think build scripts are a fantastic educational tool for my team. So I bring a new developer on, I give them the build script and say, here's what I need. Now they see architecture, they see compiling, they see unit test structure, all that kind of stuff from the build script. So it gives me a central location for information. Yeah?
What's the difference between MS Build and using a nAnt?
Absolutely nothing.
What do you think? So
It's strict. It's MS Build is a clone of nAnt and Microsoft on top of it. That's all. It's exactly the same.
So if you are saying you want to use this kind of architecture, what you're following, you would even recommend MS Build as well?
So I don't know a ton about MS Build. I believe you can do something like this in MS Build, a CFC, and not build off the solution.
I think you get smart build from the MS Build both are. I don't think it's that is granular about nAnt.
Okay, so if it's not this granular, then you can't do it with MS Build. But if you could, then I would use either. It doesn't matter. I don't pick one over the other for any religious or particular functionality reason. I just started with nAnt. I know it really well. That's what I use. So somebody else had a hand up here. Okay.
Just one question related to CruiseControl. Does it work with other repository like Subversion or?
Absolutely. It works with pretty much any repository. So you can do, I think there's like 15 or 20 listed in the tool that I was editing with. You can build your own, it's all, CruiseControl is all extensible. So if you have a repository that they don't have a plugin for, you build your own wrapper and it'll work in CruiseControl. But they have all the major ones. Definitely all the major ones. I haven't seen or heard of anyone running into a problem with a non-supported version control system yet. So, anything else? So I'm not going to show the code. We already looked at the code briefly, so we'll skip over that demo. And we'll move on to this. Does anyone know what time this ends at? This session? 4:20? 3:40. Oh, okay. All right, does it say 4:20? I don't have that much stuff. Okay. Tokenization. One of the things that you find when you're running your build scripts is you want to deploy code out of your build to many environments, right? How many people have a developer build environment, testing environment, a tester environment, a user acceptance testing, production? How many people have multiple environments, right? What's the one thing that differs between all those environments? Connection string, right? Guaranteed, if you're working on a database thing, every one of those is going to have a different connection string. You certainly aren't going to have your testers running against production database, right? It's just not what happens. How do you change, if you're doing automated builds, how are you going to change that connection string in a config file from one version of a deployment to another version? This is a problem. If you want to have automated deployment, automated release, you need to be able to do this. Tokenization helps you do that. It allows you to take a value, create a config file essentially, a config file or a build script that generates config files. We're getting into many layers of abstraction here. So, but it allows you to create a way to configure the value that the nAnt script or MS Build, well this is specifically nAnt, I'm not sure how MS Build works. So with the nAnt script, it'll read that config file and put in the value into the files and the stuff that it's generated as part of its build process. You can do anything, it doesn't just have to be connection string. I've used it for connection string, Castle Windsor ILC container configuration. I've used it as well for, in those attributes we looked at in the build, or the common assembly info.cs file, I put the application name, -- environment name. You don't want to release a build necessarily to production that was done for, specifically for UAT. So I can go and look at it and say, yeah, this was a UAT, purpose built for UAT assembly maybe. So you do anything you want. You can tokenize your C# code if you really want to, and have it put values in there. Problem with that is that you can no longer, guaranteed no longer can you compile inside the Visual Studio. It's because you've got a value that the compiler won't recognize. You have to replace the value, then use some of the compiler to compile the code that's generated. So let's look at this. So we want to tokenize, where's my project? Okay, so we've got this app config template file here. Usually that would be called app.config in a piece of code, right? I call it app config template because I'm going to use it. It's a template for generating an app.config file. Inside of it, there are tokens. So normally, what you would see so inside your config file, you normally see this line here. You know, the key is database connection, the value is server local, blah, 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 right? That's a normal type of thing you would see in there. So what we're going to do, though, is we're going to effectively eliminate it by commenting it out. We're going to put in this one here. So the difference with it, we still have the same key, but our value is @connection string @. That's a token. So nAnt, when it looks for tokens, it looks for the value with @ on either side of it, and it'll replace it with whatever you're passing in. So if we go and look at this, so this is another convention that I use. I have a separate build project for all my build artifacts. Anything that's related specifically to build, there's zero code, zero C# code in it usually, almost always. One of the things in it is my build file, so my nAnt script, and then any templates for my tokenization. Plus, in this case, I have all my SQL script in there for creating and updating the database model. I consider that part of my build process. Compile code, run my scripts, create a database, and get it into the proper structure. If any of those two things don't work, my build fails. I can't have code that doesn't have a database that's in the right structure. Can't have a database without having code that's working. It's like guaranteed failure. Yeah.
Why don't you use database project?
Tell you the truth, I just don't like it. That's a religious one for me. I just don't like it. There's also not very many people that know how to use it. It's a lot easier to do your builds through just generated SQL scripts and have them just looped over and executed. People understand that more than they understand the tool at this point, I think. So that's the only reason. You could. There's no reason you couldn't. Whoa, 5 minutes left. Got like half of the show to go. Okay, let's quickly go through this. So we can look here. This is my local properties template. Again, it's named template because it's just a shell. I rename it to localproperties.xml locally on my machine, and then I can change the value. So I can change my database name to whatever I want in here. It'll pick it up, and when it does the configuration and loop through and do all this replacing of the tokenizing stuff. What you end up with is, it should be in zero. We end up with this app config. So you can see we've got the commented outline here, and then we've got database connection, value equals, not initialized during build process. Like I did with the 0.0.0.0 thing, I put in a value that so obviously states that the token change didn't get changed, or the tokenization didn't get run properly, that in this case, it's just going to fail trying to connect to the database. But the nice thing about .NET errors is it'll say, cannot initialize connection to a database with error not initialized during between, blah, blah, blah. You can tell exactly what the problem is and what's going on. So that's what happens though. That's how you do it. If you're running multiple environments, you're gonna have to loop over this for every build of an environment that you do and pull in values from a different template file or properties file. So in my project at work, I have this local properties.template down here. I also have CI properties.template. I have SIT properties.template, UAT properties.template, production properties.template. When I go and run my build, it loops over, pulls those values in, compiles everything up that's necessary each time it loops over it, and pushes them out to a deployment folder or a release folder. So that I have, every time it runs a build on the CI server, I get every environment created for me automatically. Okay, back to the slideshow. Oh. Database management, we'll just talk about this, seems like we only got like 2 minutes left now. This is where what you were saying, you could do something where you wanted to do using the database, or data dude as it used to be called. There's lots of ways to do it. Tokenization is usually required to put in the database name so that you have create database and the actual name of that environment you're using. Tarantino is a really cool project that's on CodeFlex, or Google Code, one of the two. It's an add-in for nAnt where you can say, you configure your files in a certain way, it loops over them, runs them all for you, keeps track of what version of the database you're at for you as well. So it takes care of a lot of the infrastructure. All you got to do is create the SQL scripts, that's it. The combination of the two is what I end up using. Releases. Very important, I think. I think releases are part of every build. You should bundle up your code into a release package so you can just go and grab it and dump it on a server. So what I was talking about, having UAT, SIT, production, all that kind of stuff done. You don't have to go and take and drop it on the server, but you have it there. You know, you check it every so often to make sure it's doing the right thing, and you can go out and you can drop it as needed. Really important to maintain an archive of releases. How many you keep is up to you, but version them, have it be in a folder like 1.0.1.1. Underneath it, you have a folder UAT, SIT, production, whatever. nAntContrib is another open source project that works with nAnt. It gives you stuff like zip capabilities, so you can zip files together into one package. MSIs, you can build MSIs out of it if that's what you have to deploy. But whatever you're releasing, make sure you know what's required as part of your environment release and release that way. If you need an MSI, build and release an MSI. Look at everything that's happening in your build process, figure out what it is. If it's manual, try and figure out how to make it automatic. Right? I've worked on build processes where we just had an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with all the steps on it. It's a pretty obvious way to automate that, right? But look through it, push the boundaries. If you're doing it automatically, or you're doing manually, try and automate it. One thing you don't want to do is automate your actual deployment properly. Maybe you automate your deployment to one environment that's like a developer test environment. Don't automate your deployment to UAT or something like that, though. You don't want to overwrite the code they're working with in their testing with something else. It just confuses and muddles up the matter and doesn't make it very good. Okay, here's the resources stuff. This is the end of the presentation. Here's the resources. So we've got ReSharper license. We'll do 2 ReSharper licenses and 1 .trade license. So what do you want, ReSharper or .trade? ReSharper? Okay. I don't know. You asked the question, ReSharper or .trace? ReSharper. So I got a .trace license. Why does no one like .trace? Yeah, you want a .trace license? You asked some questions? Okay, so get the 3 of you to come down here. We'll put your names and emails onto the thing and I'll get them out to you. So thanks a lot for coming out, guys. If you want more info on this, feel free to send me an email. I've got some samples of scripts and stuff like that up on my blog as well, igloocoder.com. Feel free to go, just do a search using Google to get them. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.